What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be taking a look over here at the Bitcoin price chart, along with the total market cap of the cryptocurrency market and the altcoin market, coming off of yesterday's volatility upon the release of the producer price index at 8:30 a.m. Eastern yesterday morning, which was a massive miss, causing straight line down moments here in the stock market and over $500 million in liquidations in the crypto market upon the release of that data. Of course, the general narrative out there being, oh no, the Fed's not going to cut, which the market still prices it in. One of the historical things we've used in the past to see whether or not the market's pricing it in accordingly is if the 2-month yield is starting to break down, which it is. On Monday, we saw the breakout of the Russell 2000 from the 786 Fibonacci retracement level. Yesterday's cascading liquidations, backtesting the 786 Fibonacci retracement, and now we're getting ready to head into Friday, as of course the market is sitting on edge on whether or not there's going to be any big positive news coming out of the Trump and Putin meeting that's set to take place at 3:30 Eastern time today. Of course, the world sits back to wonder, are we about to get set up with a plethora of narratives, rate cuts, peace in Ukraine and Russia, and then any type of trade deal with China? But we're just going to have to wait for the rest of the day to see how that thing pans out, and really we're probably not going to hear anything until after the stock market actually closes and we head into the weekend. So crypto will probably be the determining factor on whether or not anything came out of that positive or not, to let us know how's the stock market going to be doing next week. Either way, as we head into this Friday, of course, we're going to be trying to close the Russell 2000 above the 786 Fibonacci retracement level today. If the Dow Jones is able to maintain what it's doing, then we should see a new all-time high for the Dow Jones Industrial Average today. That will then mean that we have the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 in new all-time highs, and the Russell 2000 above the last Fibonacci retracement level, a historical mandatory requirement for the crypto market to be able to run. At the same time, of course, we've got this altcoin market cap right back here at the all-time high. I just put out a newsletter today. One of the things I wrote about in there is I try to monitor retail sentiment because I have back-end data that I can watch to see if the crowd is pouring in. Are we too euphoric? Are things too crazy? And it's just fascinating at this time. We don't have euphoria. We don't have a crowd running crazy right now. As a matter of fact, if you go onto Twitter or X, you're probably just going to see a bunch of whining and complaining happening out there. But overall, it seems like we're entering into the exciting time of the market. So in this video, we'll touch on a few things. We'll touch on the XRP price chart in here as well, but we'll try to put together the picture over here for Bitcoin, which is starting to get pretty sloppy, along with the total market cap of crypto and the Bitcoin dominance. Now, I did just publish a newsletter this morning over at blockchainbacker.substack.com. I post 2 of these every month, but of course I posted one at the end of July as we were getting ready to head into August. With Bitcoin's price action right here, barely flipping into a new high here at $124,000 and pulling all the way back down here to 117, it creates this ranging context of, rather than being like a clean breakout, a back test, and then shooting on parabola for an ending in here to then kerplunk itself down. We've now gotten way more complicated in here by performing this action. On the July 31st newsletter, I wrote about potentially something like this happening, and we'll discuss more of it after I kind of go through this for just a second. But we've talked a lot about this on the channel already, that we're approaching Bitcoin stop and trying to look for a parabola to be formed. And so the question is being whether or not are we starting the parabola or not starting the parabola. And I'd written, so when I look at something like this and think, is it or isn't it, I start looking around at other aspects of the market for some type of signal to come from somewhere else. Something that would give me more confidence is if the altcoin market busted above the December high, because that wouldn't just be the December high, but would also be the 2021 high. So if Bitcoin broke up to the upside above $124,000 and the altcoin market broke out above the December high and the 2021 high, then it would imply we are potentially entering Bitcoin's final parabola. But if Bitcoin broke above $124,000 and the altcoin market was unable to clear the 2021 high, then it could be implying we're still just in this ranging context until it's ready for the cycle ending parabola. So, of course, the idea of that being that, are we going to end up doing one of these things where we just barely go whip the high and then we have to correct and then we can go do it, right? Or you do something like this, and then finally you end up going later. When you perform an action like that, it opens the door to it. Doesn't mean it's going to, but it definitely opens the door to it. Now, here's why I'm not like, oh, we did that, so we must be doing that. And that's because of the total market cap, mixed with what's happening with the Bitcoin dominance. And of course, the Russell 2000. I think it could be reasonable to think that Bitcoin's going to produce a muffled top, right? A lot of people in markets in the morning have questioned, oh, now that this is happening, do you think we're going to go higher than $130,000 and things like that, right? With all these targets of 250, 300, whatever they are. And my thoughts have been, no, they're not. But we saw a very muffled type of top back in 2021 with Bitcoin. And we could be potentially seeing that happen again. I think the thing to pay attention to and to question and wonder on whether or not is this thing going to correct longer, or are we going to start parabola building very soon, is paying more attention right now to the total market cap of crypto. If the total market cap of crypto is able to sustain these lows, then it's very possible that we're actually gearing up to actually go for it here pretty soon and go for the parabola building 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and get it kicked into high gear pretty quickly. Would it make sense that that could happen relatively quickly? Sure. If we're about to get this bust out to happen here in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, if we're going to see the Russell 2000 quickly just backtest this and then go shooting up for higher prices very quickly, my suspicion, of course, will be that the crypto market will be following along with that. And the idea that it could be even more muffled than people would expect for Bitcoin would just be that we're definitely operating okay over here for the total market cap of crypto. But looking more closely over here at Bitcoin, it's that it's producing the styles of behavior that you would expect in regards to these breakouts occurring for recoveries, bull flags, followed by breakouts, an attempt a little bit higher than a fall, right? Breakouts, an attempt a little bit higher than a fall. That Bitcoin may just be even more muffled. So we'll have to give this a little bit more time to determine whether or not that's the case. Because I'm looking over here at the total market cap of crypto, and I'm not seeing anything alarming over here at the total market cap of crypto. And then, of course, I'm looking at the Russell, I'm looking at the Dow Jones, and I'm looking at the Bitcoin dominance, and I'm not seeing anything alarming happening over there. But of course, what we did have back in 2021 was a very muffled Bitcoin top. And this is where the Bitcoin dominance just crumbled on itself, where Bitcoin only goes like 4% higher than its previous top in here. And it's just real muffled and real sideways throughout here as the Bitcoin dominance is collapsing on itself. And so one of the things I also wrote about in the newsletter today was just being like, we haven't reached this moment of where like the crowd is totally bought into all of it yet. The crowd is still super fearful, still super toxic, which of course is not characteristic of what happens when you get to tops. But of course, the crowd may be wondering, is what makes this any different from this, right? We saw a nice run happen back in November and December of last year. But, this is about as far as it fell. We're about an equal distance right now. What would make this any different that this could be the peak right in here? And one of the arguments I have is just merely shifting out to a bigger time frame over here on the Bitcoin dominance to show that we are replicating a lot of the behavior that happened in here before the Bitcoin dominance collapsed. We were there within just a couple of percentage points of the top of Bitcoin. Altcoins ran, and you could just see that here on the weekly time frame, and especially over there on the monthly time frame, that on the weekly time frame we've officially broken down over here on the relative strength index, which when you look back to 2021 when this breakdown started from this exact same level, it was finally breaking below 40 on the relative strength index, which we've had happen in here. Then of course look over here at the MACD, you can clearly see we have a completely different momentum happening in here compared to what this was, right? This is all of that from back in here, back in late 2024. Very clear difference happening over here on the strength indicator on the weekly time frame, let alone when we switch over here to the monthly time frame to see that as well. And I'll do y'all a favor and make this a different color this time. That clearly right back in here, here's this little blip right in here back in November and December. Here's right now in July and August of 2025. Very clear difference in here, very clear divergence and a much bigger move happening with pretty much at the point where we're going to see this flip happen over here on the moving average convergence divergence or MACD, where we're going to get that cross happen. We're going to get the red to show up in here on a much bigger time frame, implying, right, what happened? The 786 rejected it. And obviously looking back here in December, what happened in here? Nothing, right? So very questionable if Bitcoin's just being incredibly muffled like it was back in 2024, but I don't see that over here on the total market cap of crypto, as the altcoin market is being significantly stronger than Bitcoin is right now. And that's what was so difficult for a lot of people back in 2021, is that Bitcoin pretty much just floated around in the 50s and 60s for 3 months, while the Bitcoin dominance did all of its action in here, and the whole alt season took place in here. So the point I'm getting at here with Bitcoin is that with this big move, it does make it more complicated in regards to thinking that it may be an even more muffled Bitcoin. But to keep our eyes throughout the weekend, and especially this afternoon when we get through this whole Russia and Ukraine thing, right? We obviously saw macro data be the triggering event yesterday morning. The second it was released, we had over $500 billion get liquidated in a matter of just a few minutes in the market when that data got released. We'll see if this is some type of catalyst in here, and if we're able to maintain supports in here, and if it shoots its way back up in here. My thoughts are we're in the parabola. We will be in it at that point if that shows up throughout the weekend. And I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that start to emerge in here if we're already like that over here in the total market cap of crypto. And it's not that it's impossible that we can't have that happen, because we have macro conditions favorable. If these change throughout the day as we go into the closing of the week, and if the Russell falls back down in here, then hey, we're probably not ready. If the Dow Jones doesn't close into a brand new all-time high, well, then guess what? We're probably not ready. It's going to open into a brand new all-time high, but will it close there? We'll find out. But nothing changes in regards to any of this action. It's just whether or not is Bitcoin going to be super muffled and it's going to be majorly the altcoin show, or is Bitcoin going to be able to gain a little bit more strength in here? But big picture wise, looking at all this stuff, you can clearly see where we're at. And it still implies to me that we're building a long-term top in here for Bitcoin in the coming weeks or months, but that we're entering into the environment over here in macro markets. And we're seeing those things happen over there on the Bitcoin dominance in conjunction with these macro markets to imply we could be hitting some type of euphoria happening pretty soon. So while Bitcoin a little bit sloppy in here, and whether or not it's actually just getting super muffled but still doing inappropriate moves, as total is actually ahead and doing exactly like it should be doing in here, I still think that regardless of it, the show is obviously over here in the altcoin market. As for the XRP price chart, still just waffling around in here, not doing anything exciting. And my personal thoughts are its best chance to be able to do anything and get any type of breakout is going to come in conjunction with this 5-wave parabola. If we're able to get it to show up in here right now, my thoughts are that will be the top of XRP. And I've tried to remain with the consistent messaging that it's going to move with the rest of the market and shy away from all the different narratives that come out here and storytelling that happens. But right now, there's certainly a reason to be optimistic that that environment could be coming due to what we have happening in the Russell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the Bitcoin dominance, because it's one big giant trade. But XRP's arch enemy, Ethereum, of course, giving that sign as well. So I think, as most people know, most of my portfolio is XRP, but I like to kind of pick at the narratives a little bit and be a little bit of a stir in the pot a little bit, because all the narratives, this has been clearly obvious. It always moves with the market. And so the thing that we, of course, look for just for all of those conditions to be available there in the market. And the thing we're at right now is we're waiting for the big break. If we get total to start producing a 5-wave parabola, it's going to get total 3 to break out of here. And if total 3 breaks out of here, when does the crowd come? They enter upon breaks into new all-time highs. They enter into euphoria. And so being back where we're at right now is a pretty pivotal moment to determine whether or not we will start a parabola immediately, or if it's going to do the things that we've talked about in the past, where we miniaturize these things over and over and over again. So long as the total market cap of crypto is just performing a back test, just as total 2 has, not even reaching there yet, then we could be gearing up for the parabola. If total starts drifting down in here, then it sets it up that we're just going to have to wait in here longer while this thing ranges out until it's able to go, like talked about in here. If you had to ask me, which one do I favor? That we're just going to stay in here and do this for quite a while longer, or that we're going to get the actual breakout here pretty soon? Well, I have to look at these things and I say, well, as long as the Russell is on top of all its retracement levels, then I have to think we're actually on our way. If the Dow Jones is going to break out into a new all-time high and close that way going into the end of the day, then I would have to think that we're right on the brink of it. If something happens that causes this thing to falter and stumble in here for the Russell, or falter and stumble in here for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, I think that's going to give us our clue. So I think probably watching what happens with the stock market today will be a pretty big clue on what's going to end up happening for crypto, and if we're going to get stuck here for a while, or if we're going to actually start producing 5 waves very quickly. So I'll be keeping my eyes on macro markets throughout the rest of the day to see if the Russell 2000 can close above the last retracement level with a weekly close. Of course, that would mean that the Dow Jones would likely end up closing into a new all-time high, and we already have the S&P and the NASDAQ. So we'll see if those are ready to do that by the end of this week today. I think the Bitcoin dominance is flashing to us on much bigger time frames. That this show is the altcoin show from here on out. The question is just, are we ready to build the parabola right now? And I think we all know things like having to see the major indexes in the stock market get a confirmed break happening. Well, what do we also have right now? We have the total altcoin market cap right back at the high too, which would be a confirmed break of that too. So we're right there at that level. We're looking to see if we're going to end up getting it today. And we'll see if any type of catalysts come along the way by the end of the day to give us the propellant and the fuel to be able to do it. Till then, we'll just have to look at it, see how it does, and then we'll get back on it next week and see what the reaction was. But otherwise, you guys can check out the newsletter that I just published this morning. The big moment, altcoins reach the highs, await a trigger, just like we're talking about. Bitcoin dominance, altcoin market, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Russell 2000 flash a major moment, just like we're talking about in this video. It's available over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com, and it includes a 26-minute audio recording, which I recorded, of course, after I wrote this. There's a link down here in the description of this video to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, guys, have a wonderful weekend, and like many of you, I'll just be sitting there staring at these charts to see how we wrap up the week. But till next week, I'll catch you in the next one. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.